There is currently no industry certified standard for electronic translation accuracy.
Medical professionals and GPs should bill interpreting services when they require an extended consultation.
And welcome, everyone. Welcome to this final Slater Pod episode before the big summer break. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Florian.
So, big summer break in Spain, too?
Everything is really quietening down already. Everyone's deserted Madrid to go to the beach, I think.
Yeah, I don't know where people went here, but it's quite deserted-ish as well. And I'm heading up to the mountains for a couple of weeks, so you'll have to do without the podcast for 2 weeks, but keep reading the site. It's all going to be there. So today we're going to talk about chairman departures, translation devices in the UK, and in interpreting news, you're going to bring us some news from, very lively interpreting scene recently. So much happening.
Yep, lots of news from different parts of the world.
That's right. From your home country to Canada to Europe. We're not going to talk about Europe, though. But anyway, first we're starting with the great chairman departure. Today, news arrived, today being, we're recording this on a Wednesday, news arrived that RWS's long-term chairman and, partial owner, Andrew Brody, is to become a non-executive director from his current chairmanship. And so it's a very controlled transition, and they have appointed Julie Southern as what they call chairperson designate, non-executive director. So she will take over from, again, Andrew Brody in October 2023. So it's a very long-term handover, and then he will become a non-executive director, as I just said. I mean, Brody has taken this business from, from what was originally like a 40 million pound market cap to, in 2003 to 1.4 billion in market cap today. So that was quite the run up for anybody who started investing back in 2003. Is probably a happy camper. And I mean, they did a lot of acquisitions, right, over the years. So that was really driven by him. Originally patent translation, and acquired a lot of businesses, of course, speaking with the SDL acquisition. So yeah, looks like a very kind of controlled, gradual transition to a new chairman. Actually, it's a chairwoman. So I don't know, what's the appropriate term there, Anna, from you as a native English speaker? Chairwoman?
I think chairperson.
Chairperson. All right. So Southern's going to be the chairperson. So she's on a couple other boards. She's on the board of Rentokil, Ocado, and EasyJet, a brand that I used to use a lot back in the 2000s, going back and forth from London. And then she's also on a company called NXP Semiconductors that's listed on the New York NASDAQ. So very experienced individual. And so I guess we can expect a lot more from RWS going forward. Also saying goodbye is another chairman. That's Phil Norman, chairman of Straker Translations. So they have appointed Heath McKay-Cruz to take over the post of chairman, independent non-executive director. And McCruz spent over 25 years in media, education, and tech. Currently is on the board of a couple other Australia-listed companies. Do you know any of them? Southern Cross, Oro, UP Education?
Southern Cross is a very well-known media company. Owns a couple of the main TV channels there.
All right. So maybe Straker's going to get into media. Who knows? Same story there. Phil Norman said that, when he took on the chairmanship, they grew their revenues from like 5.5 million in New Zealand dollars, right? So that would, I guess in our terms, would have been a boutique agency back in 2014, not quite 2003 like RWS, but 2014. Now they completed, of course, the IPO, listed on the ASX in Australia and Sydney, did 9 acquisitions, including the most recent one. One of the most recent was Lingotech, kind of on the tech side, right? and won this huge IBM account, and now I don't have the revenue figures, but what is it, like 40, $50 million? So 10x the revenues, and are now worth about, what is it, 60, $70 million in market cap. So quite the ride there for Straker's chairman as well. Well, congrats to both those gentlemen on a job well done. 10x, 20x market cap, not easy to do. Moving on to the UK Home Office. That's an interesting one. Actually, that story isn't written by the time we talk about this. I hope we're going to get this done the week, but I did want to talk about it on the pod. It's about the use of translation devices, as they call them. And this is the Home Office. That's kind of the UK, I don't know, Interior Ministry. Is that the same in Australia? Do they call it Home Office or?
I don't think we call it the Home Office, but I don't know the term off the top of my head.
Sorry, just thinking if this is like a commonly, this is a very UK specific term, Home Office. So I had to Google it, and it's like the Interior Ministry, Department of Interior, whatever you would call it in the US, right? Long story short, they issued the version 1.0 of like the use of kind of interpreting. Let me just pull this up here and make sure that so it's basically interpreting services and the use of translation devices, detention services order. And that's version 1.0, just published super recently. And so basically it revolves around establishing kind of a framework for the provision of in-person interpreting services, telephone interpreting, and electronic translation devices, which is the more interesting one. And so basically, they say the purpose of this order is to set out the provisions, including interpreting services and translation devices available for individuals held in immigration detention. So, okay, that's not very pleasant. We're not going to delve into the whole in-person telephone, etc. That's not super interesting. But what they are kind of trying to give is guidance around using translation devices. I think what they mean is literally just like mobile phones and apps on mobile phones. I don't think they're talking about specific like standalone translation devices, which we kind of occasionally make fun of, that there are things that are marketed as translation devices because, well, we got mobile phones and apps. Now I got to start. I think they're taking a very kind of cautious approach to this. So basically that the guidance mostly revolves around like what kind of SIM cards you want to use, like checking if the device itself works like the mobile phone. There's nothing super specific actually there. They say, and they also cautious in saying like, quote unquote, the translation devices should not replace in-person or telephone interpretation services, which must continue to be used for all essential interactions where accuracy is of significant importance. Still though, I mean, they do mention it. They do try to give a bit of a framework, so potentially people feel a little more emboldened in actually just kind of spinning up Google Translate and having a conversation there. I wonder. They also don't talk about translation quality specifically, except that they're saying in one particular bullet point that there is currently no industry certified standard for electronic translation accuracy, and unless proven, devices manufacturers' claims regarding accuracy should not be solely relied upon. And then only devices approved for translating services by the Home Office compliance team can be used. I wonder, we looked at this. I wonder what those approved devices and services are. So, and then they keep saying, where possible, devices should be tested prior to their use within the center, and the compliance team should be invited to take part in the testing of the devices. Well, sounds like a bit of what do you call it? Like a bit of wishful thinking in a sense, right? They're, as we all know, it's a very complicated field, and there's no magic device that does the trick, no matter how hard the people from the compliance team will try to assess. So anyway, it was an interesting story to pick up, and I'll look forward to the article that probably lays this out a little better than I just could. So let's move on to the beautiful country of Canada, where there is another interpreter revolt. What's going on with interpreters? We had European Union a couple episodes ago. Now it's the Canadians.
So what's happening this time is that Canada's Board of Eternal Economy, which manages finances for the House of Commons, has approved a 6-month pilot project that allows the use of external and remote interpreters for parliamentary sessions. The pilot project was approved in May. It started midway through July. So basically, this pilot project enables the House of Commons to hire freelance interpreters directly. And the reason there's been a response from interpreters to the project is that this excludes the government's own translation bureau. So that translation bureau is in charge of qualifying and staffing official accredited translators, interpreters, and terminologists. So there is already a process in place there. There already a process for qualifying and making sure that only accredited interpreters are used. So that news was shared by the Translation Bureau with interpreters and also with the Canada's part of the International Association of Conference Interpreters, so that association. So yeah, there was quite a strong response from the interpreters. We spoke to Nicole Gagnon, who's an AIIC member and advocacy lead for government interpreters in Canada. So she basically said that interpreters understand that there's a need to solve for a shortage of interpreters. That appears to be the trigger for this change in process. However, she pointed out it shouldn't be done at the expense of rigor and quality or bypassing standards that work and have been in place for a long time. She pointed out that interpreters have been asking the government to invest in interpreter training programs and efficient recruitment for a number of years now.
So that is a similar issue then with the European Union, right? I mean, partially remote, partially use of freelancers and kind of, external providers.
Yeah, it's about the government going to alternative providers. So Gagnon also pointed out with respect to remote simultaneous interpreting technology that as a whole, interpreters are not against using the technology in remote sessions, so long as quality standards are maintained. It's used in a way that makes sense, such as for small meetings and not those large parliamentary sessions.
This is definitely not the last we hear of this. There will be more. So we'll keep track. And there's another one a big contract in France that we came about in our RFP service. You know, we have this RFP service where like daily we're tracking all of the translation, localization, interpreting RFPs, and our subscribers can access it. So this one we gave some particular visibility because it's really large. It's like, what is it, 42 million euros? So what's this about?
Yeah, so it is a 42 million euro contract. It's for interpreting at asylum hearings in France. The procuring department is called the French Office for the Protection of Refugees and Stateless Persons, otherwise known as OFPRA. And yeah, big opportunity. Deadline for submissions is end of August. So the interpreting services are needed during hearings for asylum seekers and stateless persons. It's a 12-month contract with possible renewal up to 3 times for a total possible term of 4 years.
So that's kind of French central government type of work. We should follow up and see who won this.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, France is still relatively kind of closed. Like we don't cover France that often, so we should just follow up and see who actually won this, if it's a known vendor. All right, let's stay with the topic of interpreting and move to your home country of Australia. What's going on there?
Yeah, story from Australia. This should come out on the SADA's site in a couple of days. So what we saw here is that new guidance was published from the Department of Health that clarified how medical professionals and GPs should bill interpreting services when they require an extended consultation. So basically, the Department of Health has clarified that when claiming for timed items, the total consultation time between a physician and a patient includes the time required to communicate effectively with the patient. So that's very good news because it's acknowledging that time might be required and that time might require the use of an interpreter. So should more time than usual be required to communicate effectively, it's considered reasonable to claim a longer attendance item than might otherwise be expected. So there was a response from the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, and they basically said that This is going to help to boost the uptake of interpreters in general practice. And they pointed out that we already know that interpreters are underutilized in general practice care due to a number of disincentives and barriers. So this clarification is hopefully going to increase the use of interpreters because there's more clarity around whether or not that time can be included in the consultation time.
This is one of the areas where you really want to have an interpreter. If it's kind of critical health related issues, you don't want communication be a major issue there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, and then just briefly, so we did have a workshop on conference interpreting the new ISO standard. What ISO standard is that? ISO
23155 2022.
Is that a fully new standard? Yeah, that was released this year, right?
Completely new. There hasn't been a conference interpreting standard before, so it's the first time this information has been captured and distilled. We know that the ISO working group worked closely with the AISC to capture kind of decades worth of knowledge and crystallize it into the standards, and it was released in January this year.
Cool. And we had this workshop with Haris Kinos, and just shameless plug here, you could still actually access this on our Vimeo on demand page where it's on the website. There's a link. So if you missed it, make sure to go there and re-watch it. All right, guys, this was it from Slater Pod in the first half of 2022. We will be back with more news and guests in a couple of weeks.